In the pre-dawn hours of December 30th, 1916, a body drifted beneath a bridge on Petrograd's icy Neva River. When it was pulled from the frozen water 2 days later, it was identified as Grigory Rasputin, the mystic whose uncanny sway over Tsar Nicholas II and Empress Alexandra had become legendary. News of his grisly end reverberated through a war-weary Russia, and amid the swirl of rumors, one charged that British agents had helped orchestrate his murder. Rasputin had risen from a humble Siberian peasant born in 1869 to a self-styled holy man who, by 1905, had secured a place at the imperial court by seemingly easing the hemophilia from the Tsarevich Alexei. Over the next decade, his influence deepened. He went from spiritual advisor to virtual power broker, while tales of his debauchery and political meddling stirred resentment among the nobility. With World War I's mounting casualties and crushing defeats, Rasputin became a convenient scapegoat, accused of undermining Russia's war effort to curry favor with Germany. On the night of December 29th, Prince Felix Yusupov invited Rasputin to a private gathering at Moika Palace. According to most accounts, the mystic was first drugged, then shot at least 3 times. His autopsy revealed 2 pistol wounds and a final fatal bullet to the forehead, fired at point-blank range with a lead, non-jacketed round matching a British Webley revolver. This bit of forensic trivia, along with the presence of Major Oswald Rayner, an MI6 officer and Yusupov's Oxford friend, has led some historians to suspect British complicity. Adding fuel to the fire is a contemporaneous letter from Captain Stephen Alley, part of the British military attaché's office, which speaks of the objective being met and loose ends to tie up, phrasing that some interpret as evidence of prior knowledge or involvement. After the war, Rayner reportedly boasted of witnessing the assassination, and even kept a bullet as a trophy, later helping Yusupov publish his memoirs. Yet, no official documentation from MI6 has surfaced, and the British Embassy in Petrograd officially denied any role, leaving open the question of whether Rayner acted solo or under orders. In the end, Rasputin's demise remains a tangled web of fact, rumor, and half-buried documents. While the forensic clues and personal accounts hint at a British hand, the absence of a clear paper trail means we must weigh the tantalizing fragments ourselves and decide whether Britain was merely an observer or an active participant in one of the Great War's most notorious intrigues. Roland Garros was born on October 6, 1888, in Réunion, and went on to become one of France's pioneering aviators. After recovering from a serious childhood illness, he enrolled in Parisian schools, ran an automobile dealership, and in 1909 discovered a fascination with flight. By 1910, he held his pilot's license, and over the next few years set consecutive altitude records, surpassing 13,000 feet in 1911 and nearly 20,000 feet in 1912, while thrilling spectators with stunt flying and races. His crowning achievement before the war came in September 1913, when he flew non-stop from southern France to Tunisia across the Mediterranean, enduring engine troubles for nearly 8 hours. When World War I began in August 1914, Garros joined the military as a reconnaissance pilot. Seeking to turn flimsy scouts into true fighters, he pioneered a system of steel deflector plates on his propeller that allowed a forward-firing machine gun, an innovation that, on April 1, 1915, earned him the first recorded air-to-air victory by shooting through his own propeller. Just weeks later, on April 18th, he was downed and captured by the Germans, his deflector-equipped plane intact. German engineers reverse-engineered the design into the interrupter gear, giving their fighters a decisive edge. Garros spent nearly 3 years as a prisoner, making multiple escape attempts until his successful breakout in February 1918, brought him to London and then back to Paris. Despite calls to retire, he returned to combat that fall, claiming a fourth victory on October 2, 1918. On October 5th, just shy of his 30th birthday, Garros embarked on what would be his final mission over the Ardennes. Engaging enemy aircraft near Vouziers, his plane was seen plummeting and exploding. He was killed only weeks before the armistice. For decades, the identity of his shooter remained unclear, but modern research attributes his loss to German ace Hermann Habich. More enduring than his 4 confirmed victories, Garros's true legacy is as an aviation innovator. In 1928, France honored him by naming its new tennis stadium and the French Open tournament after him, ensuring his name lives on long beyond the cockpit. In May 1941, Rudolf Hess, Hitler's deputy and the second most powerful figure in the Third Reich, undertook an extraordinary mission. Flying solo in a Messerschmitt from Munich, he navigated 1,000 miles through darkness to Scotland, parachuting into a farm field with a sprained ankle. When apprehended, Hess made a startling request to meet the Duke of Hamilton, claiming he carried a peace proposal from Germany. Hess believed the Duke belonged to an anti-Churchill faction willing to negotiate with Germany. His offer was straightforward. Germany would guarantee Britain's empire if Britain accepted German dominance on the European continent. This grave miscalculation reflected Hess's detachment from reality. The Duke, a loyal British officer and Churchill ally, granted Hess a meeting, but only out of courtesy. British authorities were astonished by their unexpected visitor. Hess insisted he acted alone, unwittingly reducing himself from potential diplomat to prisoner of war. Churchill, suspecting mental instability, ordered Hess treated strictly as a captive. Eventually housed in the Tower of London, Hess grew despondent and attempted suicide just weeks after his arrival. His behavior became increasingly erratic, marked by depression and paranoia, prompting Churchill to later describe his flight as a deed of lunatic benevolence. In Germany, Hitler reacted with unbridled fury. Propaganda Minister Goebbels recorded the public's shock, noting Germans openly questioned how a lunatic could have been second in command. To control the damage, Berlin quickly issued a story claiming Hess had suddenly succumbed to mental illness. Hitler publicly declared Hess had acted without authorization, while privately raging at what he saw as betrayal. Albert Speer described Hitler's reaction as an inarticulate, almost animal outcry of rage. Hess was promptly stripped of all titles and effectively erased from Nazi public life. By 1941, his influence had already waned, with many viewing him as an eccentric sidelined by more forceful regime members. Some inner circle members suggested Hess's motive was personal ambition. Securing peace might cement his position as Hitler's deputy not just nominally but in reality. Historians generally view Hess's mission as reflecting his deteriorating mental state. By 1941, he had lost standing and was increasingly influenced by mysticism and astrology. British doctors noted signs of mental illness, including paranoia, depression, and mania. Yet questions persist. Did Hess truly act alone? In 2011, Russian archives revealed a document from Hess's adjutant claiming Hitler privately expected Hess's initiative, supposedly sending him to secure peace before the Soviet invasion. If true, this arrangement would allow Hitler to deny involvement if the mission failed. Most scholars remain skeptical since this testimony was given under Soviet captivity, and multiple witnesses consistently described Hitler as genuinely shocked by Hess's flight. Another theory suggests British intelligence lured Hess to Scotland, possibly with fake correspondence in the Duke's name. This might explain Hess's conviction of a relationship with Hamilton, but no primary sources have emerged to confirm this hypothesis. Hess remained in British custody throughout the war before facing the Nuremberg tribunal. Despite odd displays of memory loss, he was deemed fit for trial and convicted of crimes against peace. From 1947, he spent 40 years in Berlin's Spandau Prison, eventually becoming its sole inmate. He died in 1987 at 93, reportedly by suicide, never fully explaining his mysterious flight. On February 9, 1942, disaster struck Manhattan's waterfront as the magnificent French ocean liner Normandy erupted in flames while undergoing conversion to a troop transport. By morning, the once proud ship lay capsized in the Hudson River, transformed from luxury liner to ruined hulk in just 12 hours. The Normandy represented the pinnacle of maritime luxury when launched in 1935. With opulent Art Deco interiors and capacity for nearly 2,000 passengers, served by 1,300 crew, she attracted celebrities and royalty, cementing her reputation as the world's most glamorous ship. When war broke out in 1939, she found refuge in neutral New York Harbor, later being seized by American authorities after Pearl Harbor and rechristened USS Lafayette. The Navy rushed to convert her into a troop transport, setting a tight mid-February deadline. Corners were cut as hundreds of civilian contractors swarmed aboard. Critically, the ship's fire suppression systems were disabled, and her French fire connections remained incompatible with New York Fire Department hoses. Disaster began when welder Clement Derrick's torch ignited nearby life vests and burlap in the Grand First Salon. With sprinklers deactivated, the fire spread rapidly. Despite firefighters' efforts, the blaze consumed much of the ship's interior before being controlled. The water pumped aboard, some 6,000 tons, destabilized the vessel. Despite attempts at counter-flooding, she capsized shortly after midnight. Remarkably, only one worker perished, though 200 others suffered injuries. In the immediate aftermath, suspicion ran rampant. Just 2 months after Pearl Harbor, many Americans suspected sabotage rather than accident. German U-boats were actively sinking ships off the East Coast, and a German spy ring had just been uncovered. Even President Roosevelt questioned whether Axis nationals had worked aboard during conversion. FBI agents recreated the welding conditions with Derrick, confirming his torch could indeed ignite the materials as described. Both Navy and congressional investigations concluded the fire resulted from carelessness and rushed work. But another theory emerged years later from the shadows of organized crime. Mob figures claimed Lucky Luciano, though imprisoned, orchestrated the disaster through his dock worker connections. The alleged plan: stage a spectacular sabotage to demonstrate the port's vulnerability, then offer mob protection to naval authorities. Indeed, declassified records confirm naval intelligence did form an unprecedented alliance with the Mafia just weeks after the disaster in Operation Underworld. Luciano was transferred to a more comfortable prison and eventually had his sentence commuted before being deported to Italy in 1946. Did the mob truly orchestrate the Normandy disaster? No definitive proof exists, though at least one Mafia informant later claimed they did the Normandy job. What's certain is that the Navy's deal with organized crime came directly in response to the fire. Most likely, the Mafia simply capitalized on an accident, offering their control over dock workers as protection against future incidents, a protection racket executed at unprecedented scale. The Normandy disaster and the government's subsequent devil's bargain with organized crime remains one of World War II's most intriguing home front mysteries, blending tragedy, opportunism, and pragmatic wartime compromise in a tale worthy of Hollywood.